The best service you can offer your customer is to offer your best services. It's probably the most foundational philosophical aspect of what we do, is that sales done right is actually service. The first hotel that we ever got was the Waldorf Astoria, New York, which at the time was the most prestigious hotel in the world. And we found out later that we were sent there to fail. We spend most of our time with the front desk. We're focused on, how do we help customers generate more meaningful incremental revenue. That's why we also say it's the art and science of frontline performance, because the art is the human interaction, the science is the techniques and the analytics. We started thinking, okay, this might be more scalable than we thought. Ziad Khoury's life work was to distill down that exact question that you just asked, is how do you actually change behavior? What he came up with, and what we use still foundational in all of our training, is there's three components. So when you put those three things together, which is what our technology does, it literally does those three things, you can then begin to change their mindset. The only way you can send someone out to do that is if you have given them safe haven in your culture. You've empowered them, you've made them feel safe, you've made them feel cherished. We spent years focusing on how do we get the people that we're asking to go in these environments to go in and be the shining light, the bright spot in that environment. And the only way to do it was to spend a lot of time on our own culture. To be a competent executive, you have to go through what I call the crucible. I do still have an intrinsic motivation to win, and to do well, because the odds were so stacked against me in the beginning of my life that where I am now is a miracle.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A foundational theme of this podcast is building high-performing, resilient businesses that can stand the test of time. To shed some light on how to go about building such a business in unpredictable markets by making bold, calculated decisions while optimizing workforce without sacrificing morale, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Geoffrey Toffetti is the CEO of Frontline Performance Group, which partners with over 2,500 hotels in 100-plus countries to drive millions in incremental revenue. Geoffrey's hospitality career started as a car valet at a Florida hotel. With a knack for sales and a sharp understanding of the industry, he rose through the ranks. As the CEO of FPG, he leads a company that partners with top brands like Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt. Geoffrey has led FPG through strategic expansion, including the acquisition of its primary competitors, Drake Beal in the US and TSA Solutions in Asia, the latter during the COVID-19 crisis. Today, FPG is continuing to drive innovation and is about to embark on its next bold move. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Geoffrey.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So quite a story you have, Geoffrey. And
you tell it very well. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Frontline Performance Group. All the names that I hear about companies, what I love about names like your company, especially your company, is that you actually explain what you do, even in your name. So it's like you're making an offer, right? That Frontline Performance Group. So if you can just kind of give us a little bit of background on the genesis of that name, and how your path intersected with the company and led you to this position that you're in, which is the CEO of the company?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's actually, like many companies, when FPG was founded, it wasn't called FPG. It was founded by a gentleman who's still our chairman of the board. He's still my boss. His name is Ziad Khoury. And the company was originally called the Khoury Group. And once he began to grow, just before I joined the company about 14 years ago, he realized that having your own name in the company name doesn't make a lot of sense. And he also wrote a best-selling book called Frontline Profit Machine. So during that process, I think the people that were guiding him were like, we need to rebrand. And since you're naming the book Frontline Profit Machine, why not call it Frontline Performance Group? And I'm glad that he did, because Corey Group would have been much harder to market on an international level, just because it does sound like a startup or a very closely privately held company.
Yeah.
And so we did. The intent was to make it as obvious as possible. When I don't have to explain who I work with, because we work with the
Right.
Frontline. Yeah. And the second part of the question, when I left the hospitality market in the end of 1999. I joined a .com startup called ZeroChaos.com. Had nothing to do with hospitality, and it was the worst possible time to join a .com startup in January of 2000.
Right.
And I was the first employee of that company, other than the two gentlemen who founded it. And so we managed to survive the .com, bubble crisis.
Yeah.
But we had this web native platform, which was very unique in 2000, and it allowed us to operate very efficiently, and we were still able to grow. I was with that company for 12 years. When I left, there were over 600 employees. And
wow.
yeah, we basically led a buyout of the company from private equity. And at that time, my positions in the company matured. And for the first time, I was able to sort of entertain other things. And right at that time, like a couple of months after that, I met Ziad. And I realized, at Zero Chaos, we were helping companies save money by, supply chain efficiency and those kinds of things. Not the most exciting stuff to spend your day doing. But
Right.
when I met Ziad, and I was thinking, okay, you're helping companies make money. You're helping
Mhm.
employees make more money. That sounds way more interesting at that time in my life. And it was a very small business at the time. And I had just come off a 10-year run of growing Zero Chaos from, zero revenue to billions in revenue. And I said, I know what to do here. And we spent 6 months getting to know each other. And I was still in my 30s. And so it was the perfect next chapter for me to join the company as sort of one of the top three in the company. It was a partnership at the time. And then, my charter was to try and figure out another vertical for the company. They were very much automotive focused. And with my hospitality background, I was like, hotels, it's where it's at. And so we got to work trying to figure out how to get to our first hotel. And
Uh-huh.
that was in 2010.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
And so did you so that hotel, hospitality business that you got into, so that was also a startup,
No, that
or
was
was it?
in supply chain management. It had
Okay.
nothing to do with hospitality.
Yeah.
Ironically,
Right.
I went from
Right.
being the director of service at a beach resort to
Uh-huh.
an operations utility player at a .com startup.
Right.
No idea what I was doing,
Yeah.
except I was the most computer literate person that any of them knew.
Uh-huh.
And so kind of helped me. And that's not true. There was a technical guy that was there that knew more than me. But from a business standpoint, like I knew how to use PDF writer. They had no idea. So like those
Right.
kind of things in startup mode back then were really valuable to them. And I knew service, so I could handle customer objections, or, when you're pre-revenue and you're trying to get to your first contract,
Right.
it's weird. A lot of the
Yeah.
conversations you're having are awkward. You don't have a track record, So I was able to just be that utility player for them in the beginning. And then I grew up with the company.
Sure. Sure. And so what was your first position with FPG, which is now where FPG?
Yeah, it was managing partner
Okay.
and
Right.
chief operating officer.
Got it.
But then we kind of restructured. One of the things that I brought, I think, was the corporate mindset to say
Yeah.
you don't want to sound like a boutique partnership, like a law
Sure.
firm. You want to
Yeah.
sound like a company. So we changed our titles over to corporate titles, vice presidents, directors, managers. And so I assumed the role of chief operating officer at that
Mhm.
time. Then he made me president. And another gentleman had joined the company in Europe, and we sort of split the world between sales and marketing and operations. And
Yeah.
I had sales and marketing, and he had operations. And that's how we were until 2021, when I was appointed CEO. And then that gentleman became international president, and our head of sales and marketing for the Americas became president of the Americas. So that's
Got
sort
it.
of the structure we're in now.
Sure. I've heard, and I think I read somewhere on your website, I think you say something like service, not sales, or something like that. I think I don't know if I
Service-based
miss
sales.
service-based sales. Right.
Yes.
So what does that mean, and how does it apply to what you do?
Yeah, it's probably the most foundational philosophical aspect of what we do is that sales done right is actually service.
Ah,
So you're
yeah,
selling through service by
right.
educating your customer, answering their questions, and then aligning them with products that they are going to enjoy the most. Now, that does
Sure.
typically come with more money, but you never want to sell them something that they're actually not going to benefit from. You
Yeah,
want to use service to inform your sales process. And another way we say it is sales is not something you do to your customer, it's something you do for them. So
ah,
when we're training
yeah,
frontline employees, like you can imagine, you get an hourly employee who's never been a salesperson, and
right.
their perception of themselves is, I take orders.
Yeah,
I'm smiling, I'm nice,
yeah,
and I just do whatever they say. So when we have to change their mindset, which we
yeah.
do, it's these kinds of creeds that you're repeated throughout that begin to change the mindset. The best
Absolutely.
service you can offer your customer is to offer your best services. That's another one that we use over and
Yeah,
over and over because
yeah.
we're relying on hourly and frontline employees to be the revenue drivers.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the front line, basically, it probably begins when you step into the parking lot, right? Customer steps into the parking lot, so a valet, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and then the checking in, and taking the baggages and putting them in that big cart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then hauling it in, and come to the front desk, and you talk to the service desk, and you get your keys and things like that, right? And they tell you these are the things you can do while you're visiting us, those kinds of things. So that is that the process, or who is involved at the front line
Yeah,
in
so
in the hospitality?
everything you said is accurate. I mean,
Okay. Uh-huh.
literally, you could even say that before you encounter an employee, you're
Uh-huh.
experiencing the brand. There could be garbage on the ground in the parking lot that
Sure.
affects your perception, right? So
Right.
service,
Yeah.
quote unquote, service starts from the moment you step foot on the property.
Hmm.
But from where we work, we spend most of our time with the front desk.
Right.
And in restaurants and bars, because
Sure.
that's where the revenue is. So we're focused
Right.
on, how do we help customers generate more meaningful incremental revenue beyond the booked revenue. So
Sure.
it's really the front desk agents and it's the servers and bartenders in the restaurants. And yeah, so it's really about, first of all, getting them to understand how important they are to the operation and to the profitability of the business. A lot of front desk
Sure.
agents don't know that they actually affect revenue and profitability. And then it's training them on the things, specific dialogues, how do you describe things so that it resonates with a guest, and that kind of science and art blend. That's why we also say it's the art and science of frontline performance, because
Sure.
the art is the human interaction, the science is the techniques and the analytics.
Absolutely. What was your vision for the front line when you got involved with the company? When you first accepted the position with the company.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I was a front desk agent,
Uh-huh.
and I knew that I wanted to take the company into hospitality. I knew that was the
Sure.
vertical that had the most, market size, and where it would immediately apply. So I was thinking about my days as a front desk agent, and I didn't receive any training. I
Mhm.
just they said, oh, you can earn a commission. So I was like, okay, I'm going to earn a commission. I doubled my pay. It's actually why they promoted me, because I took myself out of the pay range of a front desk agent through the incentives. But there was no formal program. There was no
Right.
training. So my vision was, let's take this system that had been working in car rental and in call centers for a couple decades, and let's retool it to work at a front desk,
Right.
and be able to give them structure so that we could train every person and then they could capitalize on the incentives. And
Yeah.
it worked. It took a little while because one thing, the funny story, kind of fast forward, the first hotel that we ever got was the Waldorf Astoria, New York, which
Yeah.
at the time was the most prestigious hotel in the world.
Sure.
And not the easiest environment. You're in New York, they're very busy, they were already doing a lot. And we
Right.
found out later that we were sent there to fail. We were
Uh-huh.
bugging Hilton on a very professional, persistent way. And finally
Wow.
the the executive at the top said, just send them to the Waldorf, thinking that we would go there and wither under the pressure. But we actually thrived. We tripled the revenue and it went great. And the rest is kind of history from there. But it was our first foray into applying our vision for the front desk agents in a live environment. And it was the most prestigious hotel in the world, one of the busiest hotels in the world, a union environment, which always just adds a little complexity. And we figured it out. We actually sent someone to live at the hotel for 3 months.
Wow.
And he's still with us. He didn't quit after that. But we had to immerse ourselves. And that's a big kind of part of the business philosophy that we have is when we're going into something, we immerse ourselves completely in it, then figure out how to scale it. When people try to scale things without mastery of the details, that's when things go wrong and you find yourself in the quagmire of, churn and different things because you just didn't spend the time to master it.
Yeah. The vision that you had originally, you started with Waldorf Astoria, and obviously you grew from that. You must have gotten other contracts and things like that. And that vision that you had for the company, it kind of must have gone through some changes.
Oh, yes.
Through the years. Could you kind of shed some light on what kind of changes? How did your vision change over time from what you thought it was originally to what it is today?
Yeah, and it's been, a significant transformation. So when I joined the company, again, going back to the one prior, we had made the transition from a services company to a subscription business. Largely. And so I had been, and that was very early. I mean, SaaS was barely even a term at that time, but we had done it. We had gone from services to SaaS for about 70% of our business at that time. So when I joined FPG, there was zero technology in the business. It was all training and consulting in a very traditional format. A lot of intellectual property, just none of it digital, beyond Word and Excel. So the first thing that we set out to do was create some basic form of technology that would allow us to house that intellectual property. It's a very classic first step when you're going from consulting to tech-enabled. And so we began that process in like 2015 and started building tools that we could use and then started collecting from the client the things that would be useful to them. We didn't yet have an eye on SaaS. We were thinking, how do we make our consultants more efficient so they can be better utilized? And, you're playing a utilization game when you're in the consulting business. But what we realized was there were things that could be left behind. So when you're a consulting practice, you usually get a 2 to 3 year runway, and then the client wants to internalize. So and that had been the pattern of the business for long term. So we said, okay, what if we built this technology as a leave behind? So we can give them some tools that they get used to using, and then at a lower price, they can keep using them. And so we started thinking, okay, this might be more scalable than we thought, because it used to be our people would go on site at a client on a recurring basis for a minimum of 2 years. And it could be once a week, it could be every day. We even had some hotels that had 2 full-time people there. And that is intensive, but it's not scalable. You can make a lot of money, but someone can only service 4 or 5 hotels. So with the technology, we started saying, well, what if we start doing some virtual support? What if, because of the technology, we can have our consultants spend a third of their time virtual with the clients? Now they can do 8 clients instead of 4. And we were kind of marching toward a SaaS mindset, a full virtual digital delivery. We weren't there yet, but we are starting to have those conversations with key clients in the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. The hospitality industry went into a coma. So what we did, knock on wood, we were able to survive. And what we did during that time was retrofit our technology to be client-facing more so that they were owning the system. And when we reemerged in this digital virtual delivery model. And it worked because in COVID, they didn't want us coming on site. People were still like no strangers in our environment. And so it worked. And it turned out that our clients are getting better results now than they were when we were coming on site, because
Uh-huh.
when we were coming on site, they would say, oh, we'll try hard while they're here. And when they
Right.
leave, we'll go back to doing whatever we're doing. Well,
Yeah.
now we make the manager the proxy for our consultant. We train them, we certify them, and they're there every day. So the results are actually better pound for pound with us not coming on site. And now our people can support 50 hotels or 60 hotels,
Yeah.
which has just made it infinitely more scalable. And part of, our ethos is we want frontline employees to thrive. Now we
Right.
can support a lot more frontline employees, tens of thousands of them, because
Right.
we can expand our footprint.
Yes. Yeah. At a much larger scale. Right.
Much larger scale.
Yeah. So you have a SaaS, so is that one product or is that a suite of products?
It's one platform
Yeah.
that has three value propositions in it.
Sure.
One is analytics. You can't really measure performance unless you can measure performance. So
Yeah.
there's an analytics component that visualizes performance.
Right.
There's a learning component. So there's a learning management system that we built into the platform that houses all of our own proprietary training,
Right.
hundreds of hours, a couple thousand video segments. Basically, you can go from I've never served a single person to I am the best seller in the world, and the learning is in there to get you from that point to that point.
Uh-huh.
So that's included in there. And then there's the other stuff that is about the frontline employee, things
Right.
like incentive plans, contests, recognition. There's a team feed, so they share good news with each other. So there's these sort of, again, philosophical, back to the name of your podcast. The philosophy is, how do you motivate frontline employees to care about what they're doing? That's not analytics, and that's not training. And so that whole toolkit, which was basically the basis of our consulting practice, was how do you build a frontline sales culture that's excited and motivated? So we took all of the things that we know motivate hourly employees, and we built them into digital tools. So that's the third leg of the stool, is how do you motivate and inspire the frontline teams through the system? So those tools are in there as well.
Absolutely. And so what I'm hearing is that this was supposed to be this tool, this platform, and it was supposed to be more of a something that comes after the consulting piece that happens at the front end.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's you kind of lead with it.
That's right.
And so that's the first thing that you implement. And then I'm assuming that you probably still have some projects where you go in and have actually people on site to handhold them and consult and teach and train and do all the other things that you do through the app, but also in person, right?
Yeah, we are available for a fee to come above and beyond the subscription to support and do some on-site training. But we've really gotten very good at a live instructor-led video training. So very much like a podcast or a webinar, we've gotten very good at delivering what would have been live training that way. And to be fair, the market has gotten better at it because COVID forced everyone onto video. So even hourly employees are comfortable with being on a webinar. So that those two things happened at the same time. But yes, we definitely spend time with certain clients, and we actually have a few legacy clients that we never went digital. Different industry, different vertical.
Right.
We have people in the field doing consulting. So we haven't lost our consulting chops, but in hotels, it's really the minority of the revenue is coming from
Sure. Yeah. And that's much more scalable. So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
very good thing. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've served hotels in Tanzania. We wouldn't have gotten on a plane to Tanzania for one day of training. It wouldn't have made sense. But we now have hotels in a lot of countries that it just wouldn't have been economical to fly there. And so that it's really opened the entire globe up for us.
Sure. Now, you also acquired a couple of companies about this time, in that time frame, right? Could you tell us about that? Which was the first acquisition? How did that come about?
Yeah, so the first acquisition was Drake Beal and Associates. So in the markets that we were in before, we had no competitors, really. I mean, in car rental, Frontline Performance Group was known worldwide. And so when we got into hotels, we sort of naively assumed there wasn't an FPG in hotels, but there
Right.
was. There was two. One of them was Drake Beal and Associates, who was primarily in the United States, although had a little bit of stuff around the world. The other was TSA Solutions out of Singapore.
Sure.
So we didn't run into TSA right away, but we ran into Drake Beal.
Mhm.
So to your point, when we did the Waldorf, Hilton liked the results, so they rolled us out to a handful of additional hotels, their biggest hotels.
Yeah.
And when we got there, one of them was using Drake Beal, so they were basically winding that down.
Right.
And we were like, oh, there is another player out there. So I
Yeah.
immediately reached out to him. It was one of my responsibilities at Zero Chaos was M&A and integrations. We
Sure.
did a lot of tuck-ins. So I was like, this could be an interesting first acquisition for Frontline Performance Group. So we connected, we met, we stayed in touch for a number of years. And then I think it was 2015, 2016, the stars aligned and he was ready to retire.
Right.
And wanted to monetize the business. And so we were able to come to terms. And that really helped us because he had a few relationships where he was the primary vendor.
Sure.
And so that kind of helped us with that. And then TSA, we started running into them. They were much bigger in Europe and Asia.
Mhm.
And similarly, we reached out to the owner, built rapport with him. And actually in January of 2020, we went to London to begin formal dialogue for acquisition. And the fates were looking out for us on that turn because
Mhm.
we were about to sign a binding agreement when COVID hit.
Yeah.
But we ended up, staying very close. We're able to come to terms at the end of that year
Sure.
for the first of 2021 and acquired them
Right.
as well.
Yeah. And that happened through COVID. So that is extraordinary.
Extraordinary. And,
That's crazy. Yeah.
it's one of those things where our CFO at the time, he's still there. He's still with us, but he was very conservative going in, in 2019,
Yeah.
2020. We had built up a bit of a war chest because we wanted to buy some stuff.
Yeah.
And that war chest sustained us through the downturn and
Yeah.
allowed us to, come to terms with TSA. But integrating an acquisition when none of your clients are open is a very interesting scenario because
Yeah.
their clients weren't open and ours weren't. Maybe
Right.
10% of the hotels were open at the time.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
really interesting. And we were in the
Yeah.
transition from service to SaaS. They had a SaaS
Yeah.
product. It was a
Yeah.
very interesting integration.
Yeah. Now, how did you capitalize on that? The fact that there was a downtime and here you are acquiring a company and, it's, you're not yet sure how the two are going to integrate and you're not servicing the client, in person at least. So any nuggets of gold
Yeah.
from that?
There are a couple things. We were pretty confident that if
Yeah.
we got to meet their clients, they would like us. We're very
Uh-huh.
much a relationship-driven business.
Right.
I would say our greatest strength is our relationships.
Uh-huh.
So we knew that while they're not open yet and they don't know us yet, if we get to meet them, they're going to like us. And
Right.
the big brands, we knew the big brands already. They had some contracts we didn't have, but we
Sure.
knew the same players. So we knew there shouldn't be any concern. The question was, how do we give value to the business that doesn't have any revenue? So we
Sure.
structured a creative enterprise value construct that
Right.
was based on value coming back rather than value at the moment. And it's worked out for
Right.
everyone. I think it was a very fair deal on both sides.
Sure.
But it allowed
Sure.
for them to grow back into the value
Yeah.
as the market began to recover.
Yeah. And I want to get into this a little bit, value going in and value coming out. I think that's an extremely important concept to understand. And before that, I want to ask you this and clarify with you that it's the who question. And I like to ask this question because it doesn't get asked enough. It's a funny thing. We're always servicing customers, right? And clients, and that's how we exist. And that's why we exist. And yet we don't talk about who it is, the human being, the person, whose problems I'm solving or whose aspirations I'm helping, come alive or come true, or whose goals I'm helping achieve, right? So could you give us an idea of, and I know there's a spectrum of, small mom and pop probably to, the brands. But is there like a customer avatar of this human being, this person?
Yeah, it's we actually break it into 4 different groups, people
Yeah.
that we target. If you call them the
Right.
personas, I think that
Personas, right?
that you're going
Avatar
for.
or persona, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it starts with the executive level, and
Yeah.
specifically the people that are accountable for the P&L of the hotels.
Ah.
So
Yeah.
it's usually the operational executives and revenue management executives that
Right.
are the
Sure.
personas that we're going for.
Yeah.
And we want them to have, portfolio level P&L responsibility, because they
Yes.
see the big picture. And if we're going to
Right.
work with 100 of their hotels,
Yeah.
that number is very large that we
Right.
could be helping them with. So that's
Yeah.
one constituent group. The next is the hotel general managers, because they have P&L responsibility for their property. They also have cultural responsibility.
Sure.
So when we get in there, we're trying to help both. We're trying to help with
Right.
their frontline culture and with their macro KPIs.
Sure.
Particularly now that we also work in restaurants and bars, that's a big chunk of their P&L that we can support now.
Right. Right.
So that's the next one, is the GM, the individual GM.
Right.
The next person down would be the department head.
Sure.
So at front desk, it'll be, director front office or front office manager. In a restaurant, it'd be the outlet manager or the general manager of the restaurant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because they have specific goals and responsibilities in that, and they actually manage the team.
Right.
So where the rubber hits the road on culture is with those individual people.
Sure.
I always say a company could have the best culture in the world, but if your boss is a jerk, you have a terrible culture.
Right.
So we focus on the individual managers.
Sure.
And then the fourth persona is the frontline employee.
Yeah.
We've built all of our systems from the frontline perspective up, not the other way around. So what makes us really unique is that there is direct access by the frontline employee into their own revenue performance, into their own KPIs, whereas a lot of analytics platforms stop at the outlet or at the property. We go all the way down. So it's really those 4 personas that we're concerned with, and we align our company to align at those levels. So our customer success consultants are aligned with the department head and the frontline employees.
Right.
The sales account management team or the director level in operations are aligned with the GMs and maybe one level above property. And then the account executives and the executives are aligned with the executives of the customers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that the frontline employees, I think that is your focus. And there's an org chart that I remember seeing where the customer is at the top, and the entire org chart basically reports to that customer, right? Because this is where you say rubber meets the road. This is where the magic happens.
That's right.
And if you can bring your magic to that magic, the contact with the customer, then you can bring the value to in terms of revenues and profitability and all of those other good things. And on that point, you mentioned a couple of words, and I want to clarify this because I think there is some real insights and lessons there. You said that we put some time, I think you kind of alluding to something like this, we put some time doing this stuff with the frontline staff and frontline group and organization, so that, and yet there is a lag between you do that work and that it has an impact on the revenues, right? So you do ABC, XYZ with the service, and that results into increased bottom line and or the top line.
Mm-hmm.
Could you kind of explain that process a little? Can you go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Of course. So we tend to work in environments, not always, but where the customer has made a booking. So they booked into the hotel through whatever channel. They arrive at the desk. So the property is counting on that room night recurring revenue as the revenue. So where we're playing is we're saying, okay, they're booked at a certain amount of revenue, but through service and sales, you can take that up by 15% or 20%.
Sure.
That chunk of revenue is 2 to 3 times as profitable on a percentage basis as the booking revenue, because there's no cost associated with it. There's just the incentive to the front desk agent.
Right.
So it's highly profitable and highly perishable. Those are the two terms that we use. Because if you miss, for instance, selling an upgrade into a suite and the suite is unoccupied, that revenue is gone forever. It's perished in one day.
Sure.
You can't take it off the shelf and sell it the next day. So it's highly perishable and it's highly profitable. So when we're talking about incremental revenue, it's pretty clear what your revenue was and what it is now. And that's part of what our analytics is, also to justify the ROI, to show them exactly what's happening. There are some areas where it's not as crisp, like in a restaurant. You don't know pre-booked what they were going to pay, but you do know the performance of the individuals on a trend basis, and you can see what their revenue per check or revenue per guest have been, and you can see improvement over time. But front desk, car rental, theme parks, it's super clean. You know exactly what it is, and you can measure it.
Sure. And what are some of these examples of the perishables that you help them? I don't know if you use the word. I don't know if you use the word, but in my mind, the word that popped was upsell.
Yes, upsell,
or gentle upsell, right?
Yeah, or paid upgrade. We like to call it guest enhancements, because that's really what we're doing, is enhancing the stay. But it's upsell revenue. Yeah,
sure.
So the most perishable thing is an empty room. So if you have a premier room that sits empty that you could have monetized, that's perishable completely. There's also other services. There could be experiences on property that go unsold. Key times at a golf course. If it goes unplayed, that revenue is gone forever. So we think about it in terms of like experiential revenue, that if the experience isn't purchased, it's not a product sitting on the table that you can then try and sell tomorrow. It's gone forever. And I think a lot of hoteliers are still in the process of waking up to the power of incremental revenue. Other industries like car rental, it is as fundamental to their P&L as
they're maximized it.
They're maxed, and it makes or breaks their year. Hotels, it hasn't risen to that level yet, but it is. The awareness is growing, and I think we're having an impact on that. There's RevPAR is the metric that hotels live or die by right now. It's starting to become TrevPAR, which we're happy with, which is total revenue. But RevPAR is rooms revenue per available room. And it's a metric. So you say, take your total revenue into your available room nights, and that's RevPAR.
Got it.
Well, you can increase RevPAR by 5, 6, 7% just at the front desk. And I can tell you, if you can increase RevPAR 2% year over year for your hotel, you're winning. But you can do 5 or 6% at your front desk. But the awareness of the power of incremental revenue hasn't permeated the entire market yet. There's still growth opportunity there.
And what's the timeline that you kind of look for in terms of you get engaged and they get some kind of return?
Immediately. Like the first month, they should see a difference.
Wow.
We should be paid, generally our year, because we signed up for a year, our year is paid for in the first 2 or 3 months. So the ROI is very strong. We average about 20 to 1.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So I have to believe, I'm in cultural change business. I do training and coaching and things like that. So I get the value. Your through your app and through your platform and through your services, you train the frontline staff, right? So they're going through a sort of a mindset change. Maybe some skill set change also. I'm assuming it's part of that.
Correct.
Right? How do you make that process? Because learning is in our business, we often say you can't teach anything to anyone.
That's right.
The student has to be ready to learn, and then it becomes so easy. You kind of stack the deck, and you say you want to get the best of the best, and then it's easy to train them, right? So is there any criteria that you bring? Where does this interface happen between the frontline and the app, where they're going through these courses and the curriculum and things like that, where they're going through this change in the mindset or change in some kind of a behavior, so that they're doing ABC, XYZ before, and then they're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 later. Right.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it goes back to our identity pre-COVID. We have something that we call the Corey performance equation. It's, Ziad Corey's life work was to distill down that exact question that you just asked, is
really?
how do you actually change behavior? What we're teaching is not rocket science. It's pretty basic, but how do you get someone to actually do it is exactly the crux of your question. So what he came up with and what we use still foundational in all of our training is there's three components. There's the right environment, there's the right actions, and there's the right measurement. So the environment is going to be, the culture, the tone, the mood, what managers are like. Is there an incentive plan? Those kinds of things. The actions are what managers do. So what is measured? What are they accountable for? What are the accountabilities? And then the measurement is how is it transparent to everyone so that they can see how they're doing. They can see how they compare to everyone else to create sort of a positive upward pressure. What they call the Pygmalion effect. The people that do better get rewarded. It makes everyone else want to get rewarded. So it's really these three things. And at the individual frontline level, we believe there are three things that motivate people. There is recognition, there is reward, and there's accountability. So recognition needs to come from their leaders primarily. It can also be peer-to-peer, but their leaders have to recognize them. They have to be rewarded so that the easy way to think about it is, are your top performers earning more than your bottom performers? If you can't say yes to that, then you have a misaligned incentive plan. You want people to strive for more and pay them more as they get there. And then accountability is expectation. This is part of your job. And we're going to show you how you're doing compared to everyone else. So leaderboards are a very important component of that. So when you put those three things together, which is what our technology does, it literally does those three things, you can then begin to change their mindset. Now, I will say, you just said something that I agree with 1,000%, is your top performers will get on board first. So when we go into an environment, the front desk agents that improve the most and the fastest are the ones that are already the best. But what we're really striving to do is get the middle to think like a top performer and get those that aren't doing anything to make an effort. If you do those three things, you can transform the performance at the macro level.
Wow. Thank you for explaining the process. That is fascinating to hear. And the fact that, you've spent decades doing this, first, hand to hand, face to face, right? Handshake to handshake. And then you're bringing this through your platform to digitize it and bring that experience to them. And being able to do that as a trainer, I truly appreciate the fact that you were actually able to bring these results to your clients. It's fascinating.
It was a theory for a while. Now it's no longer a theory. We have empirical evidence now. But, the thing I always say is we weren't technologists who saw an opportunity in the market and built technology. We were on the ground practitioners who saw how we could take the toolkit and digitize it. Totally different approach to software. And our CTO is brilliant. And he's also very pragmatic. So he kind of appreciated this journey where he's saying, you guys are world-class experts at something. We're going to figure out how to distill that into digital tools that your customers already like. They like you. They like your tools. Let's just make it easier for them to access it, make it digital. And it is an unusual, the pendulum usually doesn't swing in that direction. But to anyone listening, I would say, if you've been doing something for a long time and you're really good at it, I don't care what it is, there is an opportunity to service 10 times more customers if you can get your mindset to be, I don't have to put my hands on it. I can have other people put their hands on it, but govern the quality through digital tools. You can dramatically expand your footprint and be able to help a lot more customers. But I personally know some business owners that they're still convinced that if they don't talk to the customer will have a bad experience. And I'm like, I haven't talked to a customer in a long time because you're building a system that delivers on the cultural promise that you're making. And there's accountabilities. People will make mistakes. Some customers get mad. You sort that out. But being paralyzed by the idea that you can't make a transformative move, I think holds a lot of entrepreneurs back.
That is fascinating. That's one of the questions I ask people that often towards the end, and it's coming much earlier in our conversation, that how do you scale? I see a lot of businesses where and I call it the dependency academic, where not academic, epidemic, where the teams are dependent on the charismatic leadership of the leader who is involved in everything. And how do you scale? How do you step back? How do you free the organization from you and yourself from the organization so that it can be empowered, right? So that you don't have to be all these different places. And the correct use of technology that you explained, that is fascinating. So I encourage our listeners to check out your website and learn everything that they can about you as a case study. I think we're going to put this out, obviously. There's a lot of learning here. You're sharing a lot of nuggets of gold here. On our journey, on a business journey, entrepreneurial journey, on leadership journey, it's a journey, and we bring other people along on the ride, right? So you're changing the culture of your customers, and you also have your own culture within so it's like looking inward. How would you characterize the culture at Frontline Performance Group?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question, because I probably would have brought it up if you hadn't. Because going back again to our DNA, we were sending people into client environments by themselves in another country. Yeah. There was no office in the country. It was just them in their house, and they were going to these places. So and sometimes they're going in, and it's kind of hostile. Maybe the manager doesn't have a great rapport with the staff, and we're trying to mend fences. The only way you can send someone out to do that is if you have given them safe haven in your culture. You've empowered them. You've made them feel safe. You've made them feel cherished. So we spent years focusing on how do we get the people that we're asking to go in these environments to go in and be the shining light, the bright spot in that environment. And the only way to do it was to spend a lot of time on our own culture. We took a lot of guidance from Simon Sinek. A lot of people have, but we really took it to heart, and we said, okay, how do we balance care for and love of our team with expectations and accountability. And we basically arrived at a place where we said, barring COVID-19 or some catastrophic asteroid impact, we are going to give everyone as many chances as humanly possible to perform their job. We don't want to fire people for performance. We'll only separate from people if they are not honoring our culture. And they're not being kind to each other, and they're not, being honest with their leaders, and they're not, being direct with their clients. And we spent years working on this, and sometimes we'd go a little too far, and we were too giving, and then we're not giving enough. And then but we've now arrived at a place where I think if you spoke to any one of our employees, you would get a very positive affirmation of our culture, because we do trust people. One of my personal creeds is leaders give trust first and freely. And the reason that is because that is the opposite of what most people hear all their lives. Because if I'm a leader, or let's say one of your listeners has this mindset that people are going to have to earn my trust. When you meet an employee, you hire someone, and they hear that they have to earn your trust, what you're actually saying to them is, I do not trust you. And if I do not trust you, why would you trust me? So the only remedy to this problem is to say, I trust you completely. I've hired you. I've put you through our process. I've got your back. I trust you. Don't break my trust. Completely different scenario. On the same, you could replace trust with respect. They're interchangeable. So that's the culture is built on trust and transparency, and we make mistakes. We do boneheaded things like everyone else does. But we can be honest with each other. I can get called. I'm CEO. People call me out all the time because I miss someone's birthday or, I miss something.
Yeah.
But that's just has to be foundational. And then then we can hold them accountable to treating the customer that way.
Right.
Another thing that I was giving a leadership workshop at the top echelon of a internationally traded hotel company. And I kind of got called out because I was meeting with an executive and he was telling me about their employee engagement efforts. And it was all about, birthday parties and different things. And I just spontaneously said, that's not going to work. And he was taken aback. He's like, we've had committee meetings on this. What do you mean? I said, that's just window dressing. If someone's living in a bad culture and you give them pizza, you're basically saying, I don't care about the problems you're having at work. Eat your pizza and be happy. And so he said, okay, put your money where your mouth is. I have a leadership conference in 3 weeks. I'm bringing in the top 50 executives from around the world. You're going to come in and teach us about employee engagement. And this was early. We only had like 60 hotels.
Right.
So I had to go back and say, okay, how do I distill down our belief system and culture and employee engagement? And one of the things that I said in that room, and you could have heard a pin drop when I said this, I said, you can expect your guests to be treated exactly the way you treat the people you lead. So and I was speaking directly to a couple of executives that I knew were hard asses. They were very belligerent, very argumentative.
Right.
And they're sitting atop of a big organization. And I'm like, if you think your guest is going to be loved and cherished by your frontline 18 levels down when you don't treat people like that, you're deluding yourself.
Yeah.
So business owners, business managers, even team leads, it all starts with how you treat the people on your team.
100%. So, Geoffrey, you had quite a journey. You are a valet at a hotel, and here you are leading a company, and you're about 300 people at this point.
Yep.
And so it's a professional organization, and you've done an amazing job and built an incredible company. So, and looking from outside in, when you look at success like that, it often seems glamorous to the from the outside. And I talk to a lot of founders and business owners and leaders and CEOs and folks like that, and they kind of agree that it's not always moonlight and roses. That every once in a while we have, the dark matter, the soul type of thing. So the question I have for you, Geoffrey, is: has there ever been in your career, professionally, personally, with the business, a time when you thought that it was really difficult? And what was that like?
Yeah.
And
I also appreciate this question because I think, to your point, people that have not achieved executive level yet, they have a perception of what it is to be an executive. It seems glamorous and you're influential, you make more money, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And what is often missed, and I've seen it even with people in our company now, and friends of mine and young people, is to get to executive status in most cases, at least to be a competent executive, because there are some people that get promoted for the wrong reasons. But to be a competent executive, you have to go through what I call the crucible. It is a multi-year period of your career where you hate your job for the most part. You're overworked, you're underappreciated, you're underpaid, but you're galvanized in your perseverance, and you've learned to navigate the minefields of corporate politics. Because let's just be honest. If you're in a large company, there are people out gunning for your head if you're upwardly mobile. They don't want you to get promoted. They want to get promoted. So there's a lot of stuff that happens. And if you skip the crucible, if your dad is the company president and makes you a vice president at 24, you have no idea when the company starts to grow how to handle those situations. So I had a period of about 3 or 4 years where I was traveling 4 days a week. I had a newborn baby at home. Wow. My wife owned a small business. I was basically gone for 2 years. I was integrating acquisitions. which were hostile in some cases, living out of a suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was younger than my peer group by about 12 years, I was paid less than them, which I didn't appreciate, but it was the reality of the situation. So
Right.
I wasn't paid as well as them. I was being asked to do things they didn't have to do. I was being put through the crucible. And at the same time, the culture was contentious at times.
Mm-hmm.
It was,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in charge of culture at that time. I was
Right.
just a lieutenant on the field.
Yeah.
But it was it could be really cutthroat. So yeah, there was that period where I had to find my footing. I had to demand my value to be compensated through various means. And I had to win the battle of my peer group to emerge on top. And not everyone makes it through that phase of their career, or they stop where they are because they're like, this is terrible. Now, it is true when you get above that, life gets better again, because now you are in a position to set culture and set strategy. And what I took away from that period is how not to treat people, how not to motivate executives and young managers, because I had been put through the ringer. But yeah, if you're young out there, or you're about to break through, don't shy away from the pain. Don't expect to be in charge and highly paid without going through the pain, because you might get it, but then you could fail. You're not going to be properly equipped to deal with the adversity that you might face.
Some nuggets of gold there. Yes. So, Geoffrey, you deal in change a lot. You work with change, culture change, environment change, acquisitions. COVID-19, and your industry went through an absolute grinder through that time, and here you are, stronger and growing. And I in the intro we said that there is something that you're about to do that I don't know if you're ready to talk about that yet or not. But so here you are, right? You're in a good position. So what is it, underneath all of this, for most of us, there is something that grounds us and roots us. Is there something that you go to, metaphorically or practically or physically, to find your solace or find your inspiration, so that as the change happens personally, growth, internal growth, all of those things, it gives you some kind of a grounding or footing.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. Without getting too much into detail, faith is a big part of it.
Sure.
In my youth, I was raised Christian.
Uh-huh.
I rebelled against Christianity for most of my 20s.
Sure.
Then I came back to it through a variety of ways, basically an intellectual journey back rather than the spiritual journey. But
Sure.
so I have a very strong faith now, and I do rely on that to a degree. Not, I'm not a pastor or anything, but it is important to me.
Sure.
But I think also, for me personally, and this might not apply to people listening, but I had some trouble in my childhood. Some rough stuff.
Sure.
And like my dad died when I was very young, and then I had a lot of stuff along the way that was very difficult to overcome. So I did not get to go to college. So I have no college education.
Sure.
But what that did is it forced me to overachieve, to try to aspire to be more than anyone else in my family had ever achieved.
Sure.
And I still carry some of that with me, that the legacy of my family, if you will, because still no one, I think my niece is the first person to go to college. Like my sister, my brother, my mom, my dad, like no one ever went to college.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. So the spiritual part, which is do good, be a leader, try to be successful, but don't do it at the expense of your soul.
Yeah.
Be good to people, care about people, defend those who need to be defended. When you're in a leadership position, you're the one who takes the bullets.
Yeah.
Like Simon Sinek's next book, Leaders Eat Last, right? The leaders go out first.
Right.
So do that. That's my faith base. And then the other is, I do still have an intrinsic motivation to win, and to do well, because the odds were so stacked against me in the beginning of my life that where I am now is a miracle. And, and then I would say maybe the third part that I really should give some credit to is having great mentors.
Yeah.
I didn't have strong men in my life until I was in my late 20s, but find a mentor and invest time with them and listen to them and let them tell you what you're doing that's stupid, because they'll keep you out of a lot of trouble.
Sure.
But I would say it's, those are the big ones for me.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing those.
Of course.
And faith is so important, and it manifests in different ways for different people.
Of course,
I
it does.
That you approach in your own way, and yet that grounding, wherever you can find that, whatever your means of achieving that is so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, if you don't have a wellspring of energy somewhere in your life that's outside of your day to day, find one, because it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and it's something that you feel very passionate about. It's something beyond yourself. That's where I'm kind of getting the vibe.
That's right.
That it is this is not just about me. It is beyond me. All right. So it has that dimension, and for some reason, it's that dimension that is always inspiring and energizing, at least in my experience.
That's right. Yeah, no, I agree completely with that.
Anything that we have not covered that you would like to give voice to? Anything that I have not asked yet that you would like to get into and kind of share from
I normally have a couple things, but you've asked some really contemplative questions, which I appreciate, because
Thank you.
A lot of times the conversation is more just tactics.
Yeah.
So no, I think that, maybe there's one other little nugget that I'll give people kind of along the line of my career progression and how I got to where I am.
Yeah.
Is something that I try to teach young leaders whenever I have the opportunity to. Is one of the things that I learned in that crucible was there are two things that you're being assessed on when you're coming up through the ranks. One is the quality of your work, so what you're achieving, right?
Sure.
The other is how people perceive the quality of your work. So there are people, and most people have had the experience, there's someone you work with who's really charismatic, they get nothing done, and they get promoted.
Yeah.
And the person, you or someone else, is grinding away and they're not getting any recognition, right?
Yeah.
So it's both of those things. And a lot of times people get stuck in their career because of that. And then they get bitter or they get cynical. And there's a way to fix it, is learn how to promote yourself without being self-promoting. That's what those other people have learned how to do. They've learned how to be at the right room at the right time and say the right thing, so it looks like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or they're involved in the right conversation. So it's an art form. But don't neglect it, because if you're wondering why you're stuck, it's because someone doesn't know how valuable you are. You got to take some time to cultivate that image in whatever environment you're in. Do good work and make sure that the right people know you're doing good work, and you'll see your career take off.
Very well said. Geoffrey, what are the kinds of people that you would like to connect with right now? What in your sphere of influence or outside the sphere of influence? If someone is out there that you would like to get connected to, who would that person be, and how do they get hold of you?
Yeah, so I mean, we're obviously focused on the hospitality marketplace. So anyone who owns hotels, manages hotels, or consults to hotels, that thinks they could benefit from us, that's who I would immediately, or restaurants.
Sure.
Those are the people that I would immediately want to talk to. But any company out there that has a frontline presence where revenue can be influenced, we would love to hear from you. We don't exclusively work in hotels. We do have other verticals.
Sure.
So yeah, any business that with a strong frontline environment where they're influencing their guests, we'd love to hear from you. And you can find us at our website, which is www.frontlinepg, that's paulgeorge.com. Or you can look me up, Geoffrey Toffetti, on LinkedIn. I was one of the early adopters, so I got G Toffetti as my LinkedIn, which is pretty good. So yeah, either of those places. We have socials under Frontline Performance Group as well. It's on LinkedIn. So we try to make it easy to find us. So if you just type in Frontline Performance, we'll probably be the first result in your browser.
Absolutely. Even FPG, I think, brings up your company, because I was searching your company. I was researching your company, and if you just say FPG, I think that it's there in the search. And
I think it's one or two. Yeah.
Okay. And so thank you. We'll put all that information in our show notes so that people can click the link and, find out more about you. And I just, even as you were closing, and you made that side statement where, it's not just the restaurants and the hotels and there are other, and it just popped in my head, as a business person, it's like, okay, you can scale in so many other directions with the same exact thing that you're doing. Frontline, I mean, that concept. So you're just starting here. So
yes, that's right. I mean,
the
you
sky's
think
the
about
limit. Yeah.
retail or spas or anywhere that the guest could buy more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it applies.
You have so much to share. We could be here for another 2 hours, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
But
I've really enjoyed talking to you. This has been really great.
Same here. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.